your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News Weekend Edition.
Hello, I'm Naveen Day. Thanks for joining us for a look at what made headlines in Alberta this past week. Officials at Lethbridge County say a by-election will be held for Division 5 on Monday, September the 9th. It is taking place to replace former councillor Eric Van Essen, who resigned from his position and moved out of the region. The nomination period began on Friday and will run until August the 12th. Officials say that is the last day a person intending to run for council can file their nomination papers. The successful candidate would serve until the next municipal election, which is coming up in October of next year. The appointment of Jenny Carignan as Canada's new Chief of Defence Staff has made her the first woman to hold the Canadian military's top job. Glenn Miller, president of Lethbridge United Services Institute and veteran member of the Royal Canadian Legion, applauded the recent announcement made by Prime Minister Justin Trudeau.
When I look at people say the first woman, I said absolutely. And it's great that to have a woman in that position or any position. But I look at it strictly as a lieutenant general being promoted to the Chief of Defence Staff. So to see that time frame evolve to have the top position filled by a woman is great. Shows the inclusiveness and diversity of the Canadian forces. Well, I think it just shows women have been recognized for their ability. She was promoted, no doubt, on her efforts and her ability to command, being a major general, a lieutenant general, and a general. It just goes to show that women can do anything as much as men.
Carignan joined the Canadian military in 1986. She also led NATO missions in Iraq in 2019 and 2020. She is married and a mother of 4 children, 2 of whom proudly serve in the Canadian Armed Forces. Congratulations. The Lethbridge Hurricanes announced that 6 of their players have been invited to attend NHL development camps. They include Joe Ardston with the Vancouver Canucks, Noah Chadwick with the Toronto Maple Leafs, Miguel Marquez with the Nashville Predators, Harrison Menigan with the Tampa Bay Lightning, Braden Edwards with the Detroit Red Wings, and Landon Ward with the Ottawa Senators. Congratulations to all of the Canes players. Menigan and Marquez were players who were both drafted on July the 1st. Also drafted was Lethbridge native Tarek Parasak, who was selected 17th overall by the Washington Capitals. The right winger played for the Western Hockey League's Prince George Cougars last season, where he had 105 points. The Lethbridge Food Bank rolled out a program this week to help ensure the families they serve have access to nutritious food over the summer. After the Bell is a program which helps fill the gap during the summer months for families that rely on school-based nutrition programs for their children. BCN's Brett Brown has the story.
After the Bell is a program offered in partnership with Food Banks Canada. It was launched in 2015 and is expected to distribute over 200,000 food bags across Canada this summer. Lethbridge Food Bank program lead Emily Bilby says After the Bell is an important nutritional resource for families.
Parents actually dread this time of year sometimes. Some of our families are really nervous about that extra food requirement that their children need over summer. So this is a great program where our families can come in and have an extra top-up with some nutritious items and healthy items for their children over the summer. So we're really, really happy to offer that for them and relieve some of their worries over food insecurity.
During the summer, After the Bell takes the place of the Food Bank's Mindful Munchies program, which provides over 3,000 lunches per week to Lethbridge schools. The After the Bell bags are provided to families with children 5 to 12 years of age and contain items supplied by Food Bank Canada. The Food Bank then contributes fresh food items to round out the package.
So Food Banks Canada have an amazing program where all these sponsors, whether they're helping pack the bags, donate financially or contribute with the food items themselves. These are all pre-packed, pre-done and shipped over to us ready to add the fresh produce. And we're really happy because it actually doesn't cost us as a food bank. Food Banks Canada reimburse us for the produce we're adding. It's an amazingly funded program.
The After the Bell program runs until school returns in September. The food bank has enough supplies to distribute 1,400 of the nutrition bags this summer. For Bridge City News, I'm Brett Brown.
The trial of two men charged with conspiracy to commit murder at the Coutts border blockade protesting COVID-19 mandates continues. BCN was at the courthouse and has more details. Plus, the mother of one of the accused speaks on social media. What she had to say is up after this short break. Stay with us. The trial of Chris Carbert and Anthony Olenek continues to review evidence and data from seized cell phones from the accused men at the Coutts border blockade. Landon Hickok was at the Lethbridge courthouse and has more details.
Throughout the week, we have been pulling through data and evidence through phones that were seized at the Coutts border blockade, those who belonged to Anthony Olenek, Chris Carbert, and Jerry Morin, who was put on a plea bargain back in February of this year alongside Chris Lysak. Now, we understand that Carbert and Olenek each said that they were willing to die for the cause if police officers acted in a violent manner. Both Carbert and Olenek were making death arrangements, allegedly to friends and family. Olenek told one of his friends in a message, "If I die, please feed my cat and take my guns." And Chris Carbert was also in conversation with his mother and pleading with her to understand, the sooner you wake up to what's happening, the sooner you'll understand why I have to do what I do. We've also seen evidence through Chris Carbert's phone, many images of firearms and various weaponry with the location data that was on track back to his residence here in Lethbridge. In other messages, Anthony Olenek shared his concern about the police officers who were there after they allegedly disabled phones of protesters as well as vandalized two excavators at the Coutts border blockade. Now, defense has stated that regarding the content in these messages, Crown should not take them so literally, as they may not be precisely what the two men have been actually intending. But as more updates come throughout the week, as we continue to pull through evidence from these phones, we'll give you all the updates that you need here on Bridge City News.
The mother of one of the accused, Betty Carbert, says things have been very tough on her son since he has been held up for close to 2 years now. She says what has made things extremely difficult is that Chris has not spent much time with his children.
He was a single dad. And so, needless to say, he doesn't get to see his kids like he used to, and he misses them tremendously. And it's, in every other aspect, because, every day he wakes up hoping this is a nightmare. And thinks he's, going to go home, and it never happens. Of course, I can't speak of the information that they supposedly have on the men, but I will say that it seems a little fudged, for a lack of a better word.
The Alberta government announced new funding for testing methane emissions reduction technologies. Environment Minister Rebecca Schultz says $15 million will be spent over the next 5 years to test new technologies, reduce emissions, and create jobs. Officials say the funding will help more Alberta companies test technologies free of charge in both laboratory and live settings and attract more investment to get technologies to market faster.
This $15 million investment brings our total commitment to more than $72 million for methane reduction programs and technologies in recent years. But our dedication goes beyond dollars. We have reviewed more than 15,000 sites and facilities, generating over 16 million tons of emissions reductions. And again, we're proving that you can have it all. You can have strong economic growth. You can have rising energy production to meet global demand for safe, affordable, reliable, secure energy, and of course, commit to a lower emissions future.
Officials say so far more than 70 companies have already tested projects through this program, helping advance clean technologies being used in Alberta and around the world. Legal Aid Alberta says it is ending its services on Tuesday over a contract dispute with the province. The society says government officials gave it an ultimatum on a new funding arrangement that would undermine its independence. It says the government's move came suddenly after months of negotiations. The province says it is committed to funding legal aid, but must also spend tax dollars carefully. The United Conservative Party has launched a new ad campaign to introduce Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's choice for Alberta, new Alberta NDP leader Nenshi. The party says the ads expose Nenshi's cozy relationship with the Liberal Party, whom he campaigned for in 2015 to defeat Stephen Harper. And here's some good news for Calgarians as we enjoy the kickoff to the Calgary Stampede. Most indoor pools reopened on Thursday. The move came as water restrictions tied to a water main break are slowly being lifted. Swimming lessons are also resuming. All restrictions on indoor water use have ended. Coming up next, we talk more about Naheed Nenshi's easy win for the Alberta NDP. And it looks like Nenshi's NDP wants to sever ties with its federal counterparts. Our legislative reporter has more details after the break. Welcome back. The big story in Alberta politics recently has been Naheed Nenshi's huge victory as the new leader of the provincial NDP. According to our legislative reporter and the Alberta correspondent for the National Post, Tyler Dawson, the newly elected leader is looking at severing ties with the federal NDP. He explains why and if he feels Nenshi's easy win should come as a surprise.
I think I was surprised by the size of that overall number, but maybe not surprised that he received such a large proportion of the votes. About 67,000 votes, that's a huge number of votes. When Jason Kenney won, he got about 35,000 votes. And when Danielle Smith won, I think she had 32 or 33,000 votes. So this is an absolutely overwhelming endorsement from the New Democratic Party members. And there's a couple of possible explanations for that. It was less acrimonious, certainly, than some of the UCP leadership debates. Fewer issues on the table than when Jason Kenney became leader back in 2018 or 2019 after the merger and all that. So, it's a pretty different situation in some ways, but an absolutely overwhelming endorsement from the party. I think the most votes a party leader has got in the leadership contest in Alberta dating back at least to 2006, probably earlier than that. So, this says a couple things. First of all, it gives Nenshi, a very, very solid sort of endorsement of his leadership. But it also suggests, or rather confirms, or is another bit of information about what we already knew, which is that there's been a huge increase in the NDP membership during this leadership race. The party is almost certainly the largest it's ever been. It's grown from between 16 and 30,000 members to perhaps upwards of 80,000 members, I think is what the party was saying at one point. And that you've had 67,000 vote for Nenshi, and then 2,000 or 3,000 here and there for the other candidates, for maybe a total of 75,000 votes. That also means you've got a huge number of activated, involved, and curious members, which is a really important thing to have going into the next few years in opposition, thinking about looking ahead to that next election.
Was it the Nenshi camp, however, that brought in a lot of the new members?
It does seem to have been sort of overwhelmingly Nenshi's supporters. That's a good thing for him personally, in the sense that he's going to have a loyal base when they get to policy discussions and things like that at the convention. He might not have as much trouble as he may have otherwise. It also, if these people stay engaged, stay enthusiastic, it also means that he's going to have volunteers, he's going to have people knocking on doors. And of course, depending how many of these people he brought in from Calgary versus new members he signed up from elsewhere in the province, that also means that he's going to have a ready base of support within Calgary, which is going to be sort of the all-important battleground most likely in the next election. These people can be doing the things I just mentioned, knocking on doors, fundraising, putting signs in their yard, and sort of helping to sculpt or shift perceptions that Calgarians are going to have of his leadership.
So Naheed Nenshi as well, Tyler, says they're looking into the potential of severing ties with the federal NDP, which many would argue is a pretty good idea.
Yeah, the federal NDP and the Alberta NDP are, of course, in disagreement on a lot of major issues. The sort of classic example of that is when the federal Liberals bought the Trans Mountain pipeline expansion when it looked like it was going to fail. Rachel Notley supported that at the time. And Jagmeet Singh, the leader of the federal NDP, thought it was, a terribly anti-environment decision and did not support it. And the federal NDP is presently propping up the federal Liberals government. And the Alberta NDP is sort of tied to that in some way. And obviously that's a very, very unpopular government in the province. So, this relationship between the two parties is, if you didn't know it existed on paper, you almost wouldn't know it existed at all, because there has been such areas of disagreement, and Jagmeet Singh is not, flying in regularly to join the party leader at rallies and things like that. So there already is sort of this separation in many ways on policy, on positions on various issues. So this is the debate is going to happen. It is probably also going to be acrimonious, because there are longtime Alberta NDP members who are believers in this relationship and believers in the federal NDP as well. And so that divorce for them could be uncomfortable or something they don't like.
Tyler, big news in our city, and that Lethbridge West MLA Shanna Phillips is giving up her seat on July the 1st. It's the only seat the NDP holds outside of Edmonton and Calgary. Now, some thought it might be a riding where Nenshi could run, but you don't really see it that way.
No, and he's been asked about it, and he's basically said, look, I think it's important that a party leader, if they're elected to represent a constituency, should in fact spend some time in that constituency. So it's unlikely, I think, that he, at this point anyways, is going to want to represent a riding a couple hours away from where his home base is.
Coming up, there is an Alberta grassroots conservative group which says there should be a leadership review of our premiers every couple of years. Sometimes there are groups which try to influence a political party's policy one way or the other. A new group has been formed in Alberta which is trying to do just that. It is called the 1905 Committee. Co-founder Nadine Wellwood explains why she felt the need to start up her organization.
1905 is when Alberta became a province. And when we were trying to find an appropriate name, I kept emphasizing, what if we could do it all over again? And then we kind of thought about, well, the beginning and where we're going, and 1905 Committee is what we came up with.
So tell us a bit about your background in provincial politics and explain why you felt the need to start up the 1905 Committee.
Absolutely. So my background provincially started actually from a federal perspective, and I had started doing some work with the People's Party of Canada in 2019, 2021. And then when Daniel Smith was elected the leader of the UCP, I thought we would see some true grassroots changes there. And I decided to throw my hat in the ring, actually for the Livingston-McLeod riding. And I was disqualified, regrettably, by the executive at the UCP. I guess I have very strong opinions, and that's not always popular with party politics. I'm not, I guess, as easy to control as they would like. And from there, my background is a chartered investment manager, so I've been obviously following economics for at least 2 decades, and of course, politics drives a lot of the economy. And so when politics sort of arose as an opportunity for me to get involved, I took kind of my background and meshed that a little bit with what I have been learning over the last 6 years. And thus we looked at what was missing, truly missing in the space as far as true representation by the people. And 1905 was born.
So Nadine, what are some of your core goals with the organization 1905 Committee?
So some of the core goals, really, I'd say that if you had to pick one, it's about leadership accountability. A promise made needs to be a promise kept. And it doesn't matter who I speak with from any different political background, they all agree that if you're going to campaign and you're going to run an election, you need to follow through once you've been elected on those promises. And so one of the policies I probably would think our most popular policy that we are now currently pushing here in the next UCP PM is leadership accountability. So you have 24 months to fulfill your campaign promises, verbal or written, doesn't matter. You made a promise, you have 24 months to keep it. If not, you go back to a leadership review, and now you have to account to the people who elected you as to why you did not fulfill those promises.
Nadine, you just recently launched. What kind of interest has your group been generating so far?
We have generated quite a bit of buzz, actually. There's been a lot of talk, a lot of speculation, a lot of rumors, people trying to figure out how we fit into the political spectrum, which is great for us because, of course, it's really gotten the word out there. People know we're here and we exist. Um, so it's been a lot of fun, very exciting. But the reality is, we've got Edmonton's attention. And I think that's really what we've been trying to do. And we are attracting people from all different political spectrums and all different backgrounds. Obviously, we have a more of a conservative focus, but the principles, we are about principles and policy. And because we're about principles and policy, we really do appeal to a lot more people in a very unifying kind of way.
So what is your current view of our Premier, Danielle Smith?
I think Danielle Smith has done some things well, but I think there's been a lot of campaign promises that have been made that just haven't been kept. And I think there's been some, in my opinion, poor judgment decisions made. We did a Redford survey poll, and a lot of people didn't agree with the fact that she appointed Alison Redford to a Crown Corporation. Of all the people in this province, as far as even conservatives, I think Alison Redford is one of the least liked. And I think that was a poor judgment decision on her part. She's promised tax reduction. She hasn't followed through on that. For me, it's about priority. If you're going to, talk about a high-speed train between Calgary and Edmonton before reducing taxes, as you have promised in your campaign, I think, again, that's a lack of judgment.
Up next, long before Calgary first hosted the greatest outdoor show on earth, the town of Raymond started their own stampede, and it has been running ever since. The Calgary Stampede is world famous for being the greatest outdoor show on earth, but it is not the first. The town of Raymond is the holder of that title. I sat down with Ron McMullen, who is the president of the Raymond Historical Society. He shared a brief history of his town with our viewers. He also gave a brief history of the Raymond Stampede Rodeo and when and how this event came to be. Take a look.
Raymond Knight was the one who started the first Stampede. He managed a large ranch for his father, Jesse Knight, over 220,000 acres of land. And so one thing he wanted to see was a competition between all the ranches. So he invited them to come to the town of Raymond, named after him, to have a competition. So the first rodeo consisted just of two events: not saddle bronc riding, bareback riding, and also steer roping. And there were no prize money. It was just the pride money, you might say. So that happened in 1902.
And you mentioned how the town of Raymond is actually named after a person named Raymond Knight, who is one of the sons of Jesse Knight, who was a mining owner from Utah. And so what was it that sparked an interest for Raymond to come to Canada?
Okay, we need to go back to Jesse's background. Jesse actually owned the ranch at age 22, just 2 miles west of Payson, Utah. And so he was a rancher at heart. But he got interested in finding ore, like others, in some limestones. And so he felt impressed to go to one certain place, and then his son started digging, and a month later came upon a large amount of silver. And so he had enough silver and money. He bought out 6 mining operations, and eventually had $10 million, which was a lot of money back then. And so he had money, and a number of people, of course, would propose different things to him for ventures. And a fellow named John Taylor, who lived up here, and also Charles McCarty, made a proposal to him that he come up in this area and buy a ranch. And so he sent 2 of his sons, Raymond and Will, up to this area to look over things. And they went back and reported, and then John Taylor and Charles McCarty went down to Utah. And Mr. Knight, Jesse, bought 30,000 acres of land near Spring Coulee. Having invested some money, he decided he'd come up and explore things himself and see it. And when he came up, he was quite enthused. And so he bought another 220,000 acres of land. And so as he came up, he mulled over a request in a talk given by the LDS Church president, where he said, "Men and women of wealth and means, open your vaults and your purses and create employment for those who need the labor." And when he arrived here, he thought about things for a few days and had a clear idea as to what he wanted to do. So he was going to build a sugar factory and create a town.
You just mentioned the Latter-day Saints Church in your last answer there. Ron, correct me if I'm wrong, but most of the 1,500 residents of Raymond were LDS church members who immigrated to Canada. And one of the reasons is that there were jobs available with the Raymond Sugar Factory that Jesse Knight started up, right?
That's exactly right. And so it was a new opportunity for people. For example, my great-grandfather, Alonzo McMullen, came here in 1902. So the time the sugar factory was being built. It actually took 2 years to build the sugar factory, creating a lot of jobs. So the town actually went from one person in 1901 to 1,560 or so in 1903, when the sugar factory was complete. So there were a lot of people came because of the jobs.
Now, Jesse Knight also made a stipulation that the town of Raymond was to be free from alcohol. And it's very interesting that this is still the case today in Raymond.
Yeah, it was in our charter for, it was a charter for 99 years. And alternatives have been discussed in the community. And the decision is made that as of now, that will be the case. Raymond is still a dry town.
How are things shaping up on the economic landscape of Southern Alberta? Executive Director for Economic Development Lethbridge, Trevor Lewington, has that answer next.